Welcome, beautiful Paris Saint-Germain family. We're here for the usual reactions of Paris Saint-Germain's second leg versus Arsenal in the UEFA Champions League semi-finals. Let's get into it. First of all, we have Bevy. I think that's how you pronounce it. And I'm really excited to watch his prediction because last time he predicted Arsenal to beat us 3-1 in the first leg. Said a bunch of deluded stuff. Let's see if he's learned his mistake.
In my honest opinion. Let's just talk about PSG versus Arsenal. I think you have 72 hours to reflect on what happened at the Emirates. I think it was a flat atmosphere. I think it alludes to such a big club, a massive club, the pressure on Arteta, the pressure on Arsene Wenger and the managers before him as well to win the European Cup. There'll be no pressure on Liverpool in the next 100 years. They've won 6. They're the
What? So he's saying all of this is due to the pressure because Arsenal is a big club. First of all, I don't consider Arsenal a big club. Second of all, it's more in terms of experience what we saw in that Champions League semi-final. They haven't been at that stage. They didn't know how to interact with it, how to handle the situation. What?
Presentation from England in terms of doing well in the Champions League. On some level, Man City have got no pressure anymore, really. Obviously, the ownership would like 2, 3, 4 Champions Leagues, of course, and so would the fans. But that's over now. One is an amazing feat for where Man City were, same as Man United, Chelsea, etc. But the pressure for Arsenal, I felt that the Arsenal fans in the stadium were reacting to the pressure of needing to win the Champions League, particularly with such an open tournament, particularly with no real side that can dominate it. Inter Milan.
What? There's no pressure on Arsenal winning the Champions League. It's let's see how far they can go. A bit like Aston Villa.
Barcelona 3-3, they look very level, and only one goal in it between Arsenal and PSG. I think they have a great chance, Arsenal, still. If they can play to their level, it's not like we're asking Odegaard to do anything that isn't in his capabilities, because it is. On his day, he's a world-class playmaker that can find a pass and link up play to the highest level in European football. He's been great all the way through the Champions League kind of league phase. Saka as well. Saliba, you're asking these guys, the spine of the side, just to step up a little more and do a little bit more. I don't blame Saka. I think he was, he's playing his best left back in the world in Mendes, who locked up Salah a couple of rounds ago. I do blame Martin Odegaard. You need powerful midfielders. You need Roy Keane in Turin, 99. You need powerful players. You need Rodri. You need De Bruyne. And Odegaard's nowhere near those players I said. But for Arsenal, he's trying to be. For Arsenal, he's trying to be a Dennis Bergkamp figure. He's trying to be a Thierry Henry of his era, if that makes sense for Arsenal. And he was nowhere near that at the Emirates. I think they looked at the game. I think the first minute, the ball kind of kicked off from the centre circle. Arsenal looked up and thought, wow, we've got a real team. We're playing a real manager who's won the Champions League. For some, the best club side in the history of football with Suarez, Neymar, and Messi. Luis Enrique built that side. It was an outrageous team that smashed Juventus in the final, 2015, I think it was. This is a serious manager who he'll think he deserves more Champions Leagues under his belt, and bringing it to PSG would give him a very, very big achievement. To put that on his kind of shelving, having a Champions League but with PSG colours around it, would make him one of the most unique managers in the history of football. To get Paris to win their first European Cup, the first French side to win a European Cup since Marseille 40 years ago, he'll be looking at that kind of prestige, in my opinion. It's going to be very, very difficult. If PSG score first, they're out Arsenal. If Arsenal score first and PSG bottle it, because they can definitely bottle it with their legs, particularly with the French league. I believe that they're a fantastic side. But
What did he just say?
Prestige, in my opinion. It's going to be very, very difficult. If PSG score first, they're out Arsenal. If Arsenal score first and PSG bottle it, because they can definitely bottle it with their legs, particularly the French league. I believe that they're
the legs of the French league.
Fantastic side, but you can get at Paris. You really can. A poor Man City side scored a couple a few months ago against PSG, 4-2 loss. You can definitely have a go at PSG. I think Arsenal might just do it. I think it'll be Arsenal versus Barcelona.
I know deep down he's not saying who he actually thinks. If his life depended on it, or a lot of money that he has depended on it, I don't think he would be picking Arsenal. But because he's making this video to show that, I'm filled with narratives and agendas, I'm not here to be honest. I'm here to lie.
Oh, it's going to be juicy. Let me know if you can comment down below. Was that fair?
Yeah, I mean, second time I've watched this video. And once again, barely talked about the first leg. Barely talked about the second leg. Threw in some narratives about the French leagues, the leg of the French league. Once again, a lot of people did the same with Liverpool. They talk about, Arsenal had an off day. No, they faced Paris Saint-Germain. Oh, this is a PSG side they can get at. All right, moving on to the next one. This is an interesting reaction. We have Gary Neville, some thoughts here, and then some tactical thoughts from a panel. Interesting. Let's go.
Yesterday was that they played their strongest side and still lost, which will be a worry. But they've got a big game midweek. I genuinely think Arsenal midweek can do it. I think they can go to Paris Saint-Germain. I've been there I went there with David Beckham once to watch Real Madrid play there, and I watched Manchester United there as well, and seeing that you can go there, they get quite nervous, in that stadium. There's such an expectation about PSG and them winning the Champions League. and they build themselves up, it'll be a hostile atmosphere for the first 10, 15, 20 minutes. And obviously, if PSG score, it'll continue to be hostile because they'll be right at it. However, if you can get a goal, which I think Arsenal definitely can, whether it be from a set piece or from a counter attack or a bit of brilliance, whatever it might be, I just think you can see and feel it change in that stadium. And I've been there when it's happened. So I think Arsenal are in with a shout in midweek. I do think they'll finish the job and finish second in the league, to answer your question. Arsenal in midweek, it's a very, very big game for Arsenal. That I think it obviously is a season-defining game and can be career-defining, those types of games. Coming back from 1-0 behind away from home against PSG is something that ultimately, with what they've done in the quarter-final against Real Madrid, will be an absolutely incredible achievement. And
Still Thomas Partey's return be. That is
Well, you talk about him walking back into.
Okay, so first, quickly here about Gary Neville thoughts. Once again, he's looking at this the miracle perspective, which I can understand, Arsenal fans and Premier League fans looking at, but just a bit too much. Just a bit too much. And then he's talking about, I guess, PSG United in 18-19, which is completely irrelevant. But yeah, let's see this tactical thing here.
Into the team at the end.
How vital will Thomas Partey's return be?
He was so desperate to get back on the field, and yeah, he will be vital. Look, it's going to be the narrative over the next few days, building right up to the game of that Thomas Partey can change this. Okay, it's not just about Thomas Partey coming back into the team. It's Declan Rice then being freed up to be Declan Rice again.
Yep.
Because we talked about in the review show about perhaps the mistakes that he was involved in for the goal, but it's also positional sense. And there's two things around this. Okay, is one thing is straight away, which we show it here. This is what kept happening to Arsenal in the first leg.
Yep.
The midfielders, Marino and Rice, were split.
Yep.
And because that's not necessarily a criticism of them, they're set up in a way because, as we said, we've got PSG playing in these diamonds out wide, and they end up with another diamond over here. So the two midfield players inevitably end up picking up players in these areas, and PSG then exploited it down the middle. Okay, it'll be much more straight away. We're going to see Thomas Partey in that position there, and then we're going to see Declan Rice in this position here, and then we'll see Martin Odegaard in this position here. So straight away, we're going to see a much more balanced midfield.
Just really quickly before you move on, do you think Marino drops out, or will he go up front and Trossard?
I think Marino will definitely not be in the midfield, and it's going to be a difficult decision for Arteta around about who plays up front. You've got your balance with balls into the box, which will be vital with Marino, but then you've got Trossard's sort of nippy pace as well as the threat in behind and his shooting ability. So I'd err on the side of Trossard starting there, and then Marino is a threat to come on later if the game's still one goal in it.
Sorry, as you were.
Yeah, but I mean Thomas Partey doesn't just give you that. Look, let's say he was playing in that game in the first leg, and the ball goes in there to where Dembele was. I think you'd have found Thomas Partey in a very similar position to where Dembele was picking up the ball. Probably would have fouled him
rather than 10 yards away.
Exactly,
like Marino was,
exactly. Probably would have fouled him outside somewhere in the centre circle. The game breaks down. They take the sting out of the game. They do.
I mean, I've looked back at the goal we scored versus Arsenal, and what some people are not understanding is that Arsenal themselves did a man-to-man press, which left Dembele open. Because they did a man-to-man press. And when you do a man-to-man press, it's your two centre-backs on the opposition striker and everyone else is man-to-man, which leaves one open. Dembele wasn't open because Partey was not there. Dembele was open because Arsenal wanted to do man-v-man press versus Paris Saint-Germain and opened up those spaces. Me and Igal yesterday, we talked about this. Partey could have potentially recovered better than Merino. Rice could have potentially recovered if he was in Merino's position. That argument I understood. But this, copium, delusion, as usual.
Well, very often. But the other thing is that Thomas Partey does favour the right side of the field. Okay, so and that will help.
We've seen already Arsenal's attacks all
exactly.
come through.
They come down that side. So if they're attacking here with Saka and Odegaard in this position here, Thomas Partey will come and drift in here so that he's sort of blocking the counter-attack position there. And then in a setup, if PSG are playing out from the back and Arsenal will do as I say there and just don't quite press the whole way, Partey will slot back into that position to stop Dembele's ball there. The other thing that he does fantastically well is when they go into their sort of defensive shape, he'll drift towards the right-hand side, which means Declan Rice to come in, and there's two in there. Okay, they work much better as a tandem where they go like that in one position and they drop back into that in another position. Okay, and then it's 2v1 again. And then the way he works with Miles Lewis-Skelly is that Timber probably will not invert because he'll be looking at Kvaratskhelia.
That seems sensible.
Yeah, but there's a chance that Ben White might play here as well, by the way, after the way that Timber played in the first game. But if whoever that is, that will then give Partey will give a little bit of help over this side to that, which is when Miles Lewis-Skelly will invert, and Declan Rice will then drop in, and then they end up in this nice defensive three shape there, like this, across the midfield, and then you've still got your centre-backs clear. Obviously Martinelli will drop in, obviously Odegaard will drop in, and then you've got your front man, whoever it is, and Saka in there, and you end up again in this very compact defensive shape. So Thomas Partey on the ball.
Thing is, if Arsenal do that, they're leaving the spaces on the wide. Yes, Martinelli and Saka are dropping deep, but all that takes is Kvara to beat his man, is Due to beat his man, and I will barely see Arsenal get into this shape. Obviously, I don't see Arsenal having that much possession, especially on our own half. But this Skelly into the DM and so on, we're rarely gonna see it because PSG are rarely gonna let Arsenal sit in this. And I don't. Maybe Arsenal. Obviously, they're 1-0 down. Maybe they will try to sit in this, but I see it very, very rare to happen.
And off the ball will make a huge difference.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Obviously, the question was how vital will his return be? Where do you think he benefits Arsenal most, defensively or offensively?
Well, I think it's both because again, the where Arsenal got the most joy in the first leg, the two big chances. Okay, the great Donnarumma saves.
You know, one thing I've noticed about this entire party was missing the game is trying to find an excuse. Oh, Party was missing the game, man. Party was there. I understand how important Party is. I understand how important and good Party is and how that impacts Rice, Merino, who have played in different positions. They're making it way too big of a thing, man.
Were in a position where PSG got themselves a bit scattered, okay? They got themselves a bit, because they switched play, and they were in a sort of position like this, where they lost the ball. And Miles Lewis-Skelly came into midfield to receive the ball, and this is where someone like Thomas Partey gives you the protection for him to be able to come in there, and also, he gives them the ball quickly. So that's where Miles Lewis-Skelly in this area, knowing that he's got Thomas Partey to cover him if he needs him to, can come in there, and that's where Martinelli got in from Miles Lewis-Skelly's pass, okay? So first of all...
Again, it was really clear what happened for the goal. Skelly had the ball in the central areas. For some reason, Achraf Hakimi, who was in this position, randomly left to press Skelly. Skelly turned him. Then, obviously, Hakimi is not there, which meant Marquinhos versus Martinelli, which pace-wise is not a good 1v1. And Martinelli beat him to the ball and nearly scored the goal. Came from Hakimi losing his position and opening up this area. It wasn't just Skelly receiving the ball and making that.
First of all, he gives you the protection to do that. The second thing, that let's say Miles Lewis-Skelly drops into a back four there.
And Skelly did that without Partey, so I don't understand.
We saw Declan Rice drive forward with the ball once in that first leg, get into that position, and he gave it to Trossard for the other amazing Donnarumma save. And that is what Thomas Partey gives you. He gives you license. He gives you license for those other four attacking players to go and play. And it wasn't just losing one player in that first leg. It was losing two because he lost Declan Rice as well.
Right, Dino, question number 3. You've spoken a lot about Miles Lewis-Skelly there. The timber, Ben White.
Well, Miles Lewis-Skelly was excellent, especially in the second half. And he showed that you get a bit more physical with PSG and you get in their faces a little bit more and you can really upset them. He doesn't lose any duels. It's just remarkable. His body shape, size, speed, he's so strong. He's low centre of gravity. And, he ended up being able to almost take that side of the field on his own. And I mentioned in the previous show that Martinelli was going to have his work cut out tracking back with Hakimi, which obviously happened. And Hakimi's such a threat going forward. But what Miles Lewis-Skelly did very well is that because Kiwior here in the first leg doesn't come out. He stays in that position, okay? So that means that if Desiree Doué or if it ends up being Bradley Barcola in that second game, let's not forget that Dembele's an injury doubt. So, we might not see him, but Arsenal will be hoping they don't. But, if he comes in here, Miles Lewis-Skelly then is trusting his centre-back to do that job. And so then Lewis-Skelly can come into this position here, which means he's then with Hakimi. When Hakimi comes into there, the knock-on effect is you free up Martinelli. So Miles Lewis-Skelly did that brilliantly, and his decision-making is fabulous. And what we also saw is when, in the first leg when Arsenal got sucked onto this side, Miles Lewis-Skelly came in and did that responsible role as well and took the Partey position. Obviously, we won't need that necessarily with Partey. So they don't need to worry about Lewis-Skelly. What they need to worry about is this side of the field. Because I do feel very much like PSG, if they'd have been 3-0 up after 20 minutes, through Kvaratskhelia down this side, it wouldn't have flattered them. So they've got to solve this conundrum. And the way they did it in the game, it took them too long, but the way they did it in the game was to have Saka block off that line. Okay,
and that's why we saw Saka's touch.
And Saka ended up very much in here because he was sort of blocking off this line. And you don't want Saka there. You want Saka there. You want him picking up the ball with the fullback having to come over and meet him, and then Saka running into this area here in that position, right? So how do they solve this over this side? And that's where again the Thomas Partey thing comes in. And also, I've got to say that Odegaard has got to do a much deeper lying job. And look, it's hard to say when you're behind in the game to say that, we're going to not sacrifice, but dampen down one of our biggest attacking threats. So let's not let Saka do that job. Let's let Odegaard do that job over here and help out the fullback. As we say, Partey will drift right in those positions. Rice will take up there. Miles Lewis-Skelly will come in here. So we've still got this nice defensive shape, but let's get Odegaard do this job. Either Merino or Trossard, whoever plays up front, drops into this position here. And then if we win the ball back here, Saka 1v1, okay? Yes, Timber's got to be better and step up if it is Timber in that position, but they need to have a solution to this problem to stop the ball coming into Kvaratskelia's feet and Kvaratskhelia being 1v1 against Timber in this position. And I think it is Odegaard to become like a screen in that position. Because also, if he wins it back, you don't want anybody else on the ball there. No. Happy days. Get Odegaard giving your strikers the ball as quickly as possible. So, Gary Neville has...
Well, he made some good points. He mentioned some stuff I didn't even remember, like the Saka thing and the Kvara thing. But once again, it's too much on Partey that he's gonna suddenly be solving solutions. Also showing here Arsenal pressing and sitting high up. The game will be at the back. Arsenal will probably not be playing like this. Talking about Skella inverting, we won't see him be inverting that much at the back. Yeah, not that much to say, man. Interesting. Let's go to the next one. Next up, we got Michael Talks Football. Let's see what he got to say.
The second leg of the UCL is soon approaching. Tuesday, Wednesday, it is cinema time. To see tie, PSG and Arsenal. So PSG got a 1-0 lead heading back to Paris. And Arsenal, I am shocked by what Arteta did. I didn't get to watch the game, but when I saw Arteta basically field his best 11 against Bournemouth, I'm like, you do know the Premier League title race is over. Oh, we might be in trouble of not making top 5. You got top 5. You got top 5, Arteta and Arsenal. So I was shocked to see him not rest the players. They lost the game. I don't think that really matters in the grand scheme of things. I don't think that will have implications on this game. But you want to keep the players fresh. Maybe you could give like Thomas Partey some minutes because he didn't play midweek, but give rest to Rice, to Saka, to some of these players. Apparently, Timber could be out. I mean, Kvara is licking his lips. If he sees Ben White on the opposing side, Kvara's going to have a field day. Ben White was very good 2 seasons ago for Arsenal. I think the injury this season has really hampered him. And Kvara, with the form he's in, with the way he played last week at Emirates, I think Kvara's due for a massive game then. Massive game. And for Arsenal, how can you overcome the tie and advance to your second ever UCL final? They're going to have to be deadly from set pieces. That's one thing that PSG dealt very well with, except for the offside goal from Merino last week. And we know PSG, overall this season, are not the best defensively when it comes to set pieces. Arsenal have to be...
Yeah, I think we've conceded like 35% of our goals from set pieces. 21 out of 50 goals, I think. So nearly 40%. Absolutely disgusting.
They need a better... I mean, Martin Ødegaard needs to step up. He had an average game against PSG. I saw that he got an assist over the weekend, even though I saw a lot of criticism against Bournemouth. This is the sort of game where Martin Ødegaard really now needs to say, screw the tactics, I need to take over the game. He needs to be so influential. He's such a creative player. But when he's just lacking that sort of confidence, it hampers the rest of the team. So Arsenal need a massive game from Martin Ødegaard. Same thing for Saka. Martinelli needs to be clinical. And I wonder what the midfield pairing will be. Obviously, it could be Rice, Partey, and then Ødegaard. And then probably Merino back at the striker role because his sort of physicality could disrupt PSG a little bit more. Playing as a more false 9 could actually trouble the PSG defenders. That's where Arsenal could get some joy in this game. But they're going to leave themselves exposed. And if you give space to this PSG team, you're going to get cooked. We saw that time and time again against Liverpool, against Aston Villa, and also sometimes against Arsenal last week. This PSG team, when they have space, with the pace and directness of a Desiree Doué, to Kvara, to Dembele, even Barcola off the bench, it is scary hours for the opposing team. Now, I don't know what the status of Ousmane Dembele is. If he's out, that's a big loss. Because we know the form Ousmane Dembele has been in 2025. I mean, Ousmane, it's just so crazy to say that Ousmane Dembele now is the most key player for PSG. If you said that 2 seasons ago, you would have been like, are you smoking crack? Because Dembele this year has just been so lethal. Yes, sometimes he does miss a big chance, but he's critical. His off-ball movement and the way he can just drop deep to receive the ball, it just creates so many problems for the opposing team that I think Dembele is out. Who will play them more in that false 9 role? I think it's going to probably be like Desiree Doué because he's more comfortable receiving the ball in the midfield compared to Kvara and Barcola because Kvara and Barcola want to receive the ball out wide and take on the defenders. And PSG, they're at home. It's on a golden plate for them to advance to the final. It was the same thing last year against Dortmund. They lost the first tie 1-0. It happens. You lost the first tie. Take it home and see if you can overturn it. What happened? They had about a gazillion shots. They hit the post a gazillion times and they didn't advance to the final. So really for PSG, they have to just calm the nerves, play their game, and don't get flustered. I think if the legs were reversed and the second leg was at Emirates and PSG had a 1-0 lead, I actually wouldn't feel so confident for PSG because we've seen time. I know they went to Anfield and won, but it's just that Villa game just brought back those demons for some of these PSG players that have been here before where they've collapsed. The Donnarummas, the Marquinhos, I'm looking at those sort of players. But now with the new...
But again, not really. Not really. It was the complete opposite. What we saw in the Villa game was a team that was up 5-1. It was like the game is over. If you're comparing this to when we battled before, it was not because of calmness and arrogantness. It was because of stress and not being able to handle the pressure.
These guys are confident. They're fearless. This PSG team just oozes the confidence to get the job done. And I think if Vitinha, João Neves, and Fabio Ruiz play the same way they did for the first 30 minutes against Arsenal, it might be curtains for Arsenal in their season. But there is a chance here for Arsenal. There's no away goals. It's only a 1-goal deficit. Of course, Arsenal can overturn. If Arsenal get an early goal, how do PSG then react? Are they going to get frightened of the moment? It's just so fascinating to see. I feel like if PSG get like an early goal, then they add a second goal, it's 3-0 over the aggregate scoreline, I think it's done. Even though, you know, PSG were 5-1 up against Aston Villa, but it was at Villa Park. At home, PSG with that crowd, there's going to be such a great atmosphere. I feel like that's going to really help the players. Arsenal just got to play their game. Arteta understands it's going to be very difficult. No team has went away to PSG and dominated possession. No team. Not Man City, not Liverpool, not Aston Villa. No team has went to Paris and dominated the game. PSG will dictate the tempo and how this game is played. And for Arsenal and Arteta, they just have to play 5-minute games. For 5 minutes, we're going to have to probably defend deep. For 5 minutes, we're going to press high up the field to win it and get quick transitions. At 5 minutes, let's just go toe-to-toe. Let's play a basketball game. That's what Arteta has to tell his players. But this aggregate scoreline, it just...
I think it's going to be less. I think out of 15 minutes, it's going to be 12 minutes. Let's just sit back and defend. And 3 minutes for the other two. We've seen that from every other single team. City, Liverpool, the majority of time, like Liverpool didn't have a single chance the entire game apart from a goal at the end of the game. Aston Villa only had, their goal as their only opportunity. City obviously had 2 goals that came in consecutive sessions in that second half. Apart from that, didn't do that much. So I don't see Arsenal pressing high. Those other teams didn't do that. I don't see Arsenal going toe-to-toe. Obviously, Arsenal are in a desperate situation. They will lose if they don't win this game. So maybe that forces them to play a bit differently, take bigger risks. But I see them majority of the game just defending.
PSG right now. 1-0 in Paris. I would actually be very disappointed if they don't get the job done. I know I had Arsenal advancing to the final, but I would have thought that Arsenal would have won at the Emirates. When they didn't, I was like, this is going to be tough. This is going to be very, very difficult. So I think PSG, they got all the ingredients. They rested their players over the weekend. I think it was only Neville who played against Strasbourg. I know they lost the game. It doesn't matter. They won the league already. PSG, they should be getting the job done. But I would not count out Arsenal. I just wouldn't. This is now everything for Arteta and his squad. I think this game has more pressure actually on Arsenal to get the job done compared to PSG. PSG are still a young team, and if they go out, yes, it will be disappointing. But at least they got another season to go with these players. So what's going to happen on Wednesday? I do believe PSG will advance. It'll be like maybe 2-1 or 1-1, the scoreline, and PSG will advance to their second UCL final. But let me know your thoughts, people, in the comments down below. Which 2 teams will advance?
All right, great video there. Moving on to the next one. All right, next up we got Paul Merson.
I mean, what did you make of the defeat? It was at home, which was disappointing, but what went wrong?
I just think the players were nervous. It was a big football match. It's a semi-final of the Champions League. These players haven't been in a semi-final before. They're not seasoned pros in it. It doesn't matter how much money you earn, you're going to get nervous. People get nervous, and I just thought they were nervous. And I thought PSG come out, got that early goal, and they had them on the rack. And I just thought it was like Arsenal was sort of scared. Like I just thought they thought if we let in another goal here, we're out the cup tie already. We're literally out the cup tie. And I know it didn't happen with Inter Milan. They went 2-0 up against Barcelona. Barcelona played a different way to Arsenal. They got back into the game steadily, but they'll be disappointed. Certain games you get in your life and you think, God, I could have probably done more in that game. And I think there's a lot of players that would have sat in the dressing room after that game or gone home and gone to bed and laid in bed and thought, didn't really turn up. Didn't turn up. And that happens. It happens. You just hope it doesn't happen on the big stage in the big games. And it did.
How much do you think they missed Thomas Partey?
Oh, amazingly. Yeah, unbelievably. Yeah. It stopped Declan Rice bombing forward. Declan's playing as well as anybody at the moment. He's bombing forward. He's making runs, getting into the box. One of their only chances they did have, the Trossard chance, that was from Declan Rice, making a bursting run. And we didn't get as many of them because of the position he had to play. But yeah, Partey when he comes back, I mean, Odegaard will have to turn up. I'm a big fan of Odegaard, but he didn't perform the other night. But they've got another chance. They should have been completely blown out of this competition the other night. They had chances, PSG. I think it's down to the first goal. I think if Arsenal score first goal, that wipes out Tuesday's performance and it's game on. I think it's Paris Saint-Germain score first. I can't see any way back. And I know people will say, well, Villa went 4-1 down, but Villa are at home. They had nothing to lose. They had a right go, scored 2 goals in 3 minutes, and they got back in the game. And people say, oh, Arsenal won at the Bernabeu. Arsenal won on the last kick of the game. Martinelli's running away from the defender with a minute to go. If it's 1-1 in the Parc de France, they're not going to be playing gung-ho football, PSG. So, there's a lot of things to look at. I think Arsenal are right up against it, but with Partey back, you never know.
Let's talk about the atmosphere, because all week we've been building up to the game. We were hearing from Mikel Arteta, calling for this special atmosphere to, bring your boots, bring your full kits, everyone. Wayne Wright really described it as an anti-climax. What did you make of it?
Yeah, I mean, it was the first goal after 4 minutes. You get there and they've seen North London forever, the atmosphere is great, and then all of a sudden Paris Saint-Germain scored it, and of course it deflates you, it deflated the players. It did the fans. The fans would have been nervous. They're turning up, it's a semi-final, you've got an unbelievable opportunity of winning the Champions League, they've never done. And I just think it caught up with everybody, and I think that goal in the first 4 minutes was critical, and I think the fans got as nervous as what the players did, and I think it was as simple as that. I mean, it was just one of them situations where that goal literally killed the game for me for the first 20 minutes, and Arsenal got nervous, they started playing around, they looked like the Ireland Globetrotters, PSG, and that was the way it was, and that's the way it sort of panned out. Arsenal had a couple of chances, I thought they'd done well to get back in the game, didn't need half-time, but they lose 1-0, and it could have probably been 3, and they're back in it again now, they've got a chance, but yeah, I don't give them too much of a chance, if I'm being honest.
I mean, Arteta said himself that they're going to need something pretty special in Paris next week. What do they need? How do they try and hurt this team and turn it around? What chance do you give them? You said they're not much, but got to give them some hope.
Oh, of course, they've got a chance. They're a good team, Arsenal. They don't become a bad team overnight. I see PSG destroy Liverpool, but still lost the game. Still lost that game. People forget that, for how well they played, Liverpool won that football match. They don't have to, because they've only lost 1-0, they don't have to go and score that goal in the first 10 minutes. I think as long as they can get through the first 20 minutes and keep it quiet in the Parc de France, because it will be an unbelievable atmosphere. And insteadly, they don't have to score straight away. And I think that's what they've got to do. They've got to be patient, play themselves in the game, make sure they stay in this game as long as they can. And then the last 25 minutes, have a right go and have a gung-ho go at them, open the game up and see what happens. Because don't worry, PSG, the longer this game goes on at 1-0, will get very nervous. They've got an unbelievable opportunity of winning the Champions League where, with the players they used to have and the talent, we never really thought they could win it. And now they will get nervous. So I think Arsenal have to stay in the game. I think the first 20 minutes again is very, very important. I think if Arsenal can get in at 0-0 first half,
Of course, PSG with that victory against Arsenal. I have no idea what any of these says.
Well, yeah, interesting video there. I mean, not that much. I mean, I think he's a previous Arsenal player or something, and you know, he's seeing the potential miracle Arsenal can have, and so on. But yeah, he thinks, you know, it's a bit too much and so on. But yeah, moving on to the last one, we got Nabuto here.
Back to the PSG versus Arsenal semi-final. Let's talk about what happened in this first leg tie. And wow, this game was something, huh? It felt like it was a pretty even game, with PSG being slightly better on the day. And the basic stats reflect that as well. Overall, everything is split pretty evenly. Arsenal had 10 shots at home to PSG's 11, while the Gunners had one more shot on target compared to PSG. And even though they had less possession, PSG only had slightly more with 53%. And even if you look at the passes and pass accuracy, it's also pretty even, with the fouls being split evenly too. So like I said, this game was
trying to base a game around the stats. What is this, man?
But PSG were indeed slightly better, and that was reflected on the scoreboard. Literally at the very start of the game, literally almost right after that mid-axe tifo was revealed by Arsenal. Seriously, what the hell was that?
What the hell is even that?
In the 4th minute of the match, Kvaratskhelia was wide open on the left-hand side and started dribbling into the box. And once Declan Rice got dragged into helping double-team Kvaradona, he passed the ball to the wide-open Ousmane Dembele, who brilliantly finished the bouncing ball into the back of the net off the post with his left foot to give PSG the early 1-0 lead they so desperately wanted. What an incredible finish from Dembele, man. He's got 25 goals in 2025 alone. Could this guy actually win the Ballon d'Or? Only time will tell. Then in the first 20 to 30 minutes, PSG would dominate Arsenal on the pitch and create more opportunities for themselves. And eventually in the 16th minute, Kvaratskhelia would get past 2 Arsenal defenders before being held back by Germain in the box. But somehow the ref did not call this a penalty. And honestly, this call was kind of 50-50. I can see why it wasn't given, but I can also see why it should have been.
Alright, this guy just talks like an NPC, man. I want to see your thoughts. What's your opinion, man?
That's credit to Nuno Mendes, who's been having an amazing Champions League. And your season's on the line. And just to flame Arsenal a bit more, just because, you know, I'm not really a big fan of them, you know what I'm saying? First, that set-piece coach is annoying as hell. Bro has main character syndrome, just sit your ass back down. And second, that atmosphere at the Emirates was embarrassing. The PSG fans in London were way louder. And Mikel Arteta made a whole video for Arsenal to try and hype the fans up before the game. And yet, they still didn't show up. That might be one of the worst home atmospheres I've seen in a Champions League semi-final, I can't lie. But I've roasted Arsenal enough now. Do I think, after saying all that they could come back in this tie against PSG? And the truth is, no, not really. And no, Arsenal fans, Jinx Buto isn't gonna strike again. Calm down. I just think PSG are gonna win the second leg at home 1-0 or something and make the Champions League final for the second time in their history. I just think these guys are too good. Their offense is just so fluid. Anyone can play anywhere up there and attack Arsenal from every angle, and it's just not fair. Low-key, as a Liverpool fan, I feel like we were too harsh on the players in slot for getting knocked out by these guys. These MFs are crap. But yeah, I don't really think it's gonna be easy for PSG, especially if Ousmane Dembele isn't fit enough for the game, which I think he should be, but just in case. But yeah, I still got PSG beating Arsenal in the second leg, like 1-0, 2-0, or 2-1 or something, and I got them making the final for sure. Like I said, no Jinx Buto. I'm not jinxing this, bro. PSG are going through. But anyways, who do you guys think will win each second leg semi-final clash?
Alright. Things we will go through. But yeah, that's basically it for this reaction video. I generally couldn't find that many videos. Maybe most of them are going to be uploaded soon. But yeah, these were the videos I was able to find. Some cheeky reactions. Yeah, let's just hope for the victory against Arsenal FC. That's been it from boy PSG. Hope you guys have enjoyed this video. And as usual, allez, bye.